The Complaint of Nature by Alain de Lille. Meter 2. Illic forma rosae. There the form of the rose, faithfully painted, and erring very little from true appearance, matched the color of purple with its own blush, and had tinged the ground with its blood. There, playing with its companion blossoms, was the lovely, fragrant flower of Adonis. The tall lilies' silver proclaimed the fields and the valley depths. The thyme, contentious with unequal lip, and jealous of the other blooms, vied with its companion flower, Narcissus, and the merry rivers laughed with quiet murmurs. The light of all shone the columbine, of luxuriant aspect. The tiny bloom of the violet, speaking of the ease of the springtide, starred the arbute trees, its face full of the beauty of art. Here she had ordered a variety of flower to live, which was a writing surface of royal name, though yet ignorant of the thumb of the writer. These are the riches of the spring and its mantles, the beauty of the earth and its stars, which the art of the pictures showed, representing the blossoms with deceiving skill. With these blooming garments of flowers does the graciousness of the spendthrift spring ennoble the meadows, some showing pure white, others purple, being woven by the skilful right hand of Favonius. Prose 2. Haec vestium ornamenta quam vis plenis sue splendida latis flamerent ardoribus. Although these decorations of the garments flamed with the glow of their own full splendor, yet their luster suffered eclipse by the star of the Virgin's beauty. The Virgin, furthermore, on tiles, with the aid of a reed pen, called up and pictured various images of things. Still the pictures would not keep closely, but quickly vanished to the material beneath them, and died away, leaving no traces. Although she often quickened them and caused them to live, yet they could not endure in the plan of her composition. Now the Virgin, as before said, came forth from the bounds of the celestial region, and was borne in her shining chariot toward the lowly dwelling of the suffering world. She was drawn by the birds of Juno herself, which were not disciplined in the service of the yoke, but were united by their own willingness. And a man who towered above the head of the Virgin and the chariot, and whose countenance breathed not the commonness of earth, but rather the mystery of godship, aided the weakness of the womanly nature, and guided the approach of the chariot in a well-regulated course. While I was collecting my rays of sight, the maniples, as it were, of my eyes, to contemplate the height of this beauty, they, not daring to meet such grace and majesty, and weakened by the blows of splendor, fled, very fearful, to the tents of the eyelids. At the Virgin's coming, you would have thought that all the elements were keeping solemn festival, renewing, so to speak, their own natures. The firmament ordered its stars to shine more brightly than their wont, and lit the Virgin's path, as it were, with its candles. And because of this the light of day itself was seen to wonder at their great boldness, since it saw them appear almost insolently in its presence. Phoebus, too, assuming a countenance gladder than usual, disclosed and poured out on the approach of the Virgin all the riches of his light. To his sister, also, whom he had deprived of the ornaments of his splendor, he returned the garment of delight, and ordered her to meet the coming queen. The air put away the tearful visage of clouds, and with the favor of a clear face smiled upon the maiden's approach. Tossed at first in the madness of the north wind's anger, now it rested pleasantly in the lap of Favonius. Birds, through some natural inspiration, sported with delightful play of wings, and gave the virgin show of veneration. Juno, who but a little while before had scorned the embraces of Jove, was so carried away with joy that, with many a laughingly so glance of her eyes, she allured her husband to the delights of love. The sea, until then torn in tumultuous floods, now observed the coming of the Virgin with solemn ceremony, and promised the perpetual peace of rest. For Aeolus, that his winds and tempests in her presence should no longer raise civil wars, bound them in his cells. Fish swam out into the upper waters, in so far as the inactivity of their sensual existence permitted, and with joy and delight knew in advance the coming of their mistress. Thetis, celebrating her marriage with Nereus, purposed to conceive another Achilles. And maidens, whose beauty not only stole away the reason of man, but also made the celestials forget their godship, came forth from the places of streams, and, like bearers of tribute, presented little gifts of aromatic nectar to the coming queen. When the Virgin had graciously received these, she showed her love for the maidens by the encircling yoke of embraces, and by many a repeated kiss. The earth, lately stripped of its adornments by the thieving winter, through the generosity of spring donned a purple tunic of flowers, that it might not, in glorious and ragged vestments, appear to the young virgin unbecomingly. And the spring, like an artisan skilled in weaving, in order the more happily to welcome her approach, wove garments for the trees, and with a sort of bow these lowered their leaves, veneration, as if they were bending their knees, offered her their prayers. Out of them came maidens who enriched the treasures of the actual day by the day of their beauty, and bore in cedar vessels spices prepared from the kinds of herbs that they represent, and, as if paying their tribute to the young virgin, bought her favor with their gifts. Nymphs of the dell filled their laps with flowers, and now reddened the royal chariot with blushing blossoms, now made it lily-like with white flower leaves. Flora generously presented the Virgin with an undergarment of fine linen, which she had worked for her husband, that she might merit his embraces. Proserpine, loathing the couch of her Tartarian spouse, and returning to her native upper world, was unwilling to be denied the presence of her mistress. And the animals of the earth, taught by some natural instinct, on learning of the Virgin's approach, sported with glad gaiety. So was the sum of all things eager in attention to her, and with wonderful rivalry strove to gain her favor. Meter 3. Floriger Horentum Zephyrus Laxaverit Annum. Flower-bearing Zephyrus had softened the rugged year, and quelled the wars of Boreas with its peace, and bathed in a hail of flowers, rained privet bloom, and ordered the blossoming snows to be in the meadows. The spring, like a lively fuller, refreshed the garments of the fields, and with the fire of its purple, kindled the dresses of the flowers. It gave back foliage to the trees which the winter had shorn, thus restoring that vesture which the other had formerly taken away. It was the season in which, to the applause of dryads, the abundant favor of the spring spreads out its treasures in its fields, in which, while the hardier strength is present, the infancy of flowers rises higher, and draws away from its mother earth, in which the mirror of the violet clings to its earthly cradle, and, with fresh countenance, asks for the breath of the air. It was the season in which the earth, her head starred with roses, with full constellation rivals the sky. in which the almond tree flies its banners and proclaims the beginning of summer, and with its bloom calls out the joys of spring, in which the budded vine embraces its elm's wedded bosom, and thinks on its giving birth. The candle of the sun banished winter's shade, forcing all cold to suffer exile. Still there lurked withdrawn in many woods an illusory winter, which the newborn shadiness of the forest had made with leaves. Now to her flower child Juno gave the breasts of dew with which this nourisher first suckles her offspring. It was the season in which the strength of Phoebus awakens the dead grasses, commanding all to rise from their burial mounds, in which the joyful aspect of spring makes calm the world, and wipes away the tears of winter from its face, so that a flower may commit itself to the good faith of the air, and wintry cold blast not the first blossom. In which Phoebus visits the earth, groaning with the sluggishness of winter, and greets it with joyful light, in which the latest period of time puts away age, and the old world begins to be a boy, in which Phoebus spoils night of its proper hours, and the pygmy day commences to become a giant, in which the Phryxian herd rejoices in its friend the sun, pays its tribute, and makes ready a welcome for Phoebus, in which the nightingale, singing a song with a tongue of honeyed music, celebrates the festival of its own springtime, in jubilee for which it so strikes the lyre of its throat that with its own mouth it proclaims a very god, in which the lark with sweet sound counterfeits the Cythera flies to the gods above and talks with Jove. A silver splendor clothed the wanton streams, and had ordered its daylight to be on the rivers. One could see the garrulous flow of a changing fountain, the murmur of the running of which was a prologue to sleep. By the glory of its appearance, the fountain itself asked that tired man take draughts of it. Prose 3. Hac igitur amoenantis temporis juventute. But the virgin was not gladdened by the acclamations of any of these things in the freshness of this pleasant season, and could not moderate her former grief. Lowering the chariot to the ground, she came toward me with modest approach, beautifying the earth with her footsteps. After I had looked on her a time, not far distant from me, I fell on my face, prostrated by stupor of mind and all buried in the delirium of ecstasy, and the powers of my senses imprisoned. And, neither in life nor in death, I struggled between the two. She, kindly raising me, strengthened my dizzy steps with the comfort of her supporting hands, and encircling me in her embrace and sweetening my lips with modest kisses, made me well, who was weak and sick with stupor, by the honey-flowing balm of her speech. When she saw that I had returned to myself, she depicted for my mental perception the image of a real voice, and by this brought into actual being words which had been, so to speak, archetypes ideally preconceived. Alas, said she, what blindness of ignorance, what delirium of mind, what failing of the senses, what infirmity of the reason has placed a cloud on thine understanding, has forced thy spirit into exile, has dulled the power of thy feeling, has made thy mind to sicken, so that not only thine intellect is cheated out of its quick recognition of thy nourisher, but that also thy power of discerning, as it were smitten by a strange and monstrous sight, suffers a collapse at my very appearance. Why has recognition of my face strayed from thy memory? Thou, in whom my gifts bespeak me, who have blessed thee with such abundant favor and kindness, who, from thine early age, as vice-regent of God the Creator, have ordered by sure management thy life's proper course, who in time past brought the fluctuating material of thy body out from the impure essence of primordial matter into true being, who pitied thy misshapen countenance, which, so to speak, cried often to me, and marked it with the stamp of human appearance, and ennobled it, destitute before of beauty and grace of lineament, with the more excellent vesture of features. And here, arranging the different offices of the members for the protection of the body, I ordered the senses, as guards of the corporeal realm, to keep watch, that like spies on foreign enemies, they might defend the body from external assault. So would the material part of the whole body, being adorned with the higher glories of nature, be united the more agreeably when it came to marriage with its spouse, the spirit. And so would not the spouse, in disgust at the baseness of its mate, oppose the marriage. Thy spirit also I have stamped with vital powers, that it might not, poorer than the body, envy its successes. And in it I have established a power of native strength, which is a hunter of subtle matters in the pursuit of knowledge, and establishes them, rendered intelligible in the understanding. On it, also, I have impressed the seal of reason, to set aside by the winnowing fan of its discrimination the emptiness of falsehood from the serious matters of truth. Through me, also, the power of memory serves thee, hoarding in the treasure chest of its recollection the glorious wealth of knowledge. With these gifts, then, I have blessed both, that neither might groan over its own poverty, or complain at the other's affluence. And just as this marriage is brought to pass by my consent, so is the same marital bond dissolved according to my decision. Not in thee particularly, but also in all things universally, shines out the abundance of my power. I am she who have fashioned the form and eminence of man into the likeness of the original mundane mechanism, that in him, as in a mirror of the world itself, combined nature may appear. For just as, of the four elements, the concordant discord, the single plurality, the dissonant consonance, the dissenting agreement, produce the structures of the palace of earth, so, of four ingredients, the similar unsimilarity, the unequal equality, the unformed conformity, the separate identity, firmly erect the building of the human body. And those qualities which come together as mediators among the elements, these establish a firm peace among the four humors. And just as the army of the planets opposes with contrary motion the fixed rolling of the firmament, so in man is found a continual hostility between lust and reason. For the activity of reason, taking its rise from a celestial source, passes through the low levels of earth, and, watchful of heavenly things, turns again to heaven. The activities of lust, on the other hand, wandering waywardly and contrary to the firmament of reason, turn and slip down into the decline of things of earth. Now the latter, lust, leads the human mind into the ruin of vices, so that it perishes. The former, reason, bids it, as it rises, to ascend to the serenity of virtue. The one dishonors man, and changes him to a beast. The other mightily transfigures him into a god. Reason illuminates the darkness of the brain by the light of contemplation. Lust extinguishes the radiance of the mind by the night of desire. Reason makes man to talk with angels. Lust forces him to wanton with brutes. Reason teaches man to find in exile a home. Lust forces him, in his home, to be an exile. And in this, man's nature cannot reproach me for my ordering and management. For, out of the counsel of wisdom, I have set such a war of opposition between these antagonists, that if, in this strife, reason bend down lust to defeat, the victory will not be without its following reward. For prizes won by victories shine more fairly than other presents. Gifts acquired by labor are brighter and more delightful than all those that are free. And he deserves the commendation of greater praise who toils and receives little, than he who receives much at ease. The earlier labor, pouring a certain sweetness into the following recompense, rewards the worker with greater favor. In these, then, and in the greater gifts of nature, the universe finds its qualities in man. Hear how in this universe, as in a great city, order is established by the control of a majestic government. In the heavens, as in the citadel of a human city, resides imperially the everlasting ruler. From him eternally has gone forth the command that every individual thing should be known and written in the book of his providence in the air. As in the middle of the city, the heavenly army of angels does service, and with delegated control diligently extends its guard over man. Man, like one foreign born, dwelling in a suburb of the universe, does not refuse obedience to the angelic host. In this state, then, God is commanding, the angel administering, man serving. God by command creates man, the angel by work procreates him, man by obedience recreates himself. God by decree determines a thing, the angel by action fashions it. Man submits himself to the will of the controlling spirit. God commands with the mastery of authority. The angel administers with the service of action. Man obeys with the mystery of regeneration. But the present line of our thought has gone too far astray, which would venture to raise the theme to the ineffable mystery of Godship. In the effort to grasp which the breath of our mind faints. Now a likeness to this most excellently ordered state arises in man. In the citadel of the head rests wisdom, who commands, to whom, as to a goddess, the other powers, as demi-goddesses, do obeisance. For her, inborn understanding and ability in logic, as well as the faculty to recall the past, which dwell in different rooms of the head, are eager to do service. In the heart, as in the midst of the human city, magnanimity has established her dwelling place, and, acknowledging her service under the dominion of wisdom, works as that authority determines. The loins, like outlying districts, give over the extreme parts of the body to passionate pleasures. These, not daring to oppose the direction of magnanimity, serve her will. In this realm, then, wisdom assumes the place of commander, magnanimity the likeness of the administrator, passion acquires the appearance of the servant. In other parts, also, of the human body is shown the likeness of the universe. For just as in the universe the boon of the sun's heat heals things which are sick, so in man a heat which proceeds from the depths of the heart enlivens and freshens the members of the human body. And just as the moon in the workings of the universe is the mother of many humors, so in man the liver imparts a humor to his members. And just as the moon, when deprived of the light of the sun, pales, so the strength of the liver becomes inactive when widowed from the enlivening comfort of the heart. And just as in the absence of the sun the air is clothed in darkness, so without the aid of the heart the vital power pants in vain. In addition to these, see how the universe changes its appearance with the various successions of seasons, how now it rejoices in the boyhood of spring, now advances in the youth of summer, now matures in the manhood of autumn, now whitens in the old age of winter. Like change of season, and of the same variety, alter the age of man. For when the dawn of age arises in human nature, there begins man's early spring. When the chariot of life has gained the farther turning posts, man basks in the summer of youth. But when longer existence shall have completed the 9th hour of age, so to speak, he passes beyond into the autumn of manhood. And when the day of his age sinks towards the west, as decay now announces the evening of life, the wintry frost of old age makes him grow white with its rime. In all these things resounds unspeakably the working of my power. Yet I have determined to cover the face of my might in very many ways, preserving its mystery from commonness, for fear lest, if I should impart to man a close knowledge of myself, those matters, which at first are prized among men because unknown, would afterward, when known, be held of little worth. For, as the common proverb witnesses, communication of a thing is the mother of contempt. The trump of Aristotelian authority declares that he lessens the majesty of mysteries who divulges secrets to the unworthy. But lest I should seem, in this my prerogative and power, to be detracting arrogantly from God, I profess most emphatically that I am the lowly disciple of the Supreme Ruler. For I, as I work, am not able to press my step in the footprints of God as he works, but I contemplate him in his activity from a long way off, as it were with longing. His operation is simple, mine is multiform. His work is faultless, mine is defective. He is marvelous, mine is transient. He is incapable of being born, I was born. He is the maker, I am the made. He is the creator of my work, I am the work of the Creator. He works from nothing, I beg work from another. He works by his own divine will, I work under his name. By his nod alone he orders a thing to exist, but my activity is the mark of the divine activity, and, compared with the divine power, thou canst see that my power is impotent. So mayest thou perceive that my achievement is defective, and consider that my strength is of trifling degree. Take counsel from the author of Theological Riches, to whose trustworthiness, rather than to my strong opinion, thou oughtest to give assent. For, according to his sure testimony, man by my working is born, by the might of God is born again. Through me he is called from not being into being. Through him he is led from being on into a better being. For through me man is begotten unto death. Through him he is created unto life again. But the mystery of my profession is disregarded by the mystery of this second birth, for such a birth does not need such a midwife. But rather am I, nature, ignorant of the nature of this birth, and in the effort to comprehend these matters, the keenness of my intellect grows dull. The light of my reason is blurred. For the understanding is amazed at the things not understood. The perception is confused by the things to be perceived. And since here all theory of natural objects fails, let us revere the mystery of so great a thing by the strength of faith alone. and it is not strange if here theology does not extend me her friendship, since in many matters we are conscious, not of enmities, but of diversities. I attain faith by reason. She attains reason by faith. I know in order that I may believe. She believes in order that she may know. I assent by perceiving and knowing. She perceives by assenting. I barely see the things that are visible. She comprehends in their reflection things incomprehensible. I by my intellect hardly compass trifles. She in her comprehension compasses immensities. I, almost like a beast, walk the earth. She serves in secret heaven. Now, although it is not part of my office to treat of what has been said, yet I have allowed my discourse to stray thither, that thou mightest not doubt that, compared with the superlative might or power of God, my power is exceedingly small. But although my activity is deficient when compared with the divine power, nevertheless it exceeds human power, when balanced with it, greatly. And therefore, in a comparison of 3 steps, we can find 3 grades of power, so that the power of God may be called the superlative, that of nature the comparative, that of man the positive. All this discourse gives thee, and without any questioning doubt, a close knowledge of me. And to speak more intimately, I am nature, who have sought after thee for my presence with the gift of my esteem, and thought thee worthy to bless with my conversation. When nature unveiled to me through these words the face of her being, and by her reminder, as by a key, unlocked ahead for me the door to her acquaintance, the little cloud of stupor which had lain close on my mind lifted. And by this reminder, as by some medicinal potion, the sick stomach, so to speak, of my mind cast out all the remnants of its illusion. Then, restored anew to myself from my mind's wandering, I fell headlong at the feet of nature, and, in the place of a salutation, marked them with pressure of many a kiss. Then, rising and composing myself, presented her in speech, with a reverent bowing of the head as to divine majesty, the offering of a salutation. Fittingly I fled to the retreat of excuse, and with prayers made from the honey of humility, I entreated her kindness not to assign the fact that I had paid her coming no joyous greeting to the fault of heedlessness, nor to impute it to arrogant displeasure, nor to ascribe it to the venoms of ingratitude. But rather at her appearance I had been stupefied in the false death of ecstasy, as it were struck dumb at the strange presence of a marvelous apparition. And I said that it was not to be wondered at if before such divinity the countenance of mortality in me paled, if in the noon of such majesty the small beam of my perception went out into the twilight of error, if at the appearing of such bliss my poor wretchedness was ashamed. For the dark obscurity of the ignorance of weak humanity, and its impotent dumbness of amazement, and its frequent fits of stupor, are allied by a certain bond of brotherhood, inasmuch as, from the close association, frail human nature is always wont, like a pupil disciplined by a teacher, instructing him and informing him of the laws of his race, both to be darkened by ignorance at the first sight of a new subject, and in the attention to great principles, and to be smitten with stupor, and to be overcome with amazement. While this manner of excuse was gaining for me the kindly hearing of the Queen, and was earning her favor the more agreeably, and besides was giving me the confidence that I should hear greater things. I laid before her consideration a certain unsettled doubt of mine, which was disturbing the welcome in my mind with extreme and pressing restlessness, and I proceeded in these words of inquiry.